So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the virtual book talk, When Symphony Meets Project Management, a story of a saved concert season. Um, please make yourself comfortable. Feel free to type when you guys are coming from in the chat. And welcome to the virtual book talk. So this event is hosted by PM Ready, a nonprofit providing resources and a platform to empower the youth with project management learning. My name is Evelyn Chao, and I am the founder of PM Ready. No matter who you are or where you're from, I am so excited to have you join us for an intergenerational conversation. So before we begin the conversation, please just let me announce some housekeeping matters. So firstly, this meeting will be recorded, and please hold your questions until the discussion sessions, or you can type it in the chat. Mute yourself unless you're speaking. It's just I'm iffy on this, but you can turn on your video if you want. Complete new people joining and complete the post-event survey. And then for our agenda, it's going to be just a get to know you, get to know the author, get to know the book, and then we're going to have a discussion, and then the Q&A, and then lastly the message for the youth. And just a reminder that if you are a PMI certified member, please remember that you can earn 1 free PDU from attending this book talk. Okay, so that's a lot. First, let's get started by getting to know each other. So the first question is, what is your role? Are you a student? Are you PMI certified, or are you another? I'm a student, so I would type S in the chat. So yeah. Okay. Certified. Nice. PMI certified. Yeah. I'm getting there. Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's just move on to the next question then. What is your project management experience? Do you want to be a project manager? Are you a first-time manager, or are you a seasoned manager? I would say that I would want to be a project manager because I'm not quite there yet. But honestly, I feel like we are all project managers in our own way, as we use it in our daily lives for anything. So, okay, just a few more seconds. I'm getting to us. You'll get there. I'm getting to us too. Okay, next. What is your role in music? Are you a music fan? Are you a music player? Or are you none of the above? Which is okay because, to one its own, I guess. I mean, you can be both too. I am a music fan and I'm also a music player. So, and I mean, if you're a music player, feel free to say which instrument you guys play. Nice. Jazz drums. That's nice. Piano, yeah. I play piano. Okay. That's awesome. Okay. So I am glad to see. Ooh, sorry. New person joining. I'm glad to see our audience coming. Say again? Okay. Yeah, I think that was just it's okay. I'm glad to see our audience coming from such diverse backgrounds. Again, welcome. And no matter how you feel about becoming a project manager, or how much you know about project management, or how much you like music, I'm pretty sure you'll find, or hopefully you'll find our conversation today very insightful. So now it is my great honor to introduce our panelist, Mr. Gerald Leonard. Mr. Leonard is the author of the recently published book, A Symphony of Choices: How Mentorship Taught in Manager Decision-Making, Project Management in a Workplace Environments, and saved a concert season. So it's a long title. Mr. Leonard is a CEO and founder of the Leonard Productivity Intelligence Institute and CEO of Turnberry Premier, which is a strategic project portfolio management and IT governance firm. So early in this career, Mr. Leonard worked as a professional bassist and studied with David Walters, a distinguished professor of double bass at both the Juilliard and the Manhattan Schools of Music. Mr. Leonard is an in-demand executive coach and an acclaimed speaker on topics of workplace culture and strategy execution. So Mr. Leonard, welcome, and thank you so much for giving your book talk to our audience today. Could you please unmute yourself and say a quick hello to us?
Sure, I think I'm already unmuted. And hello, everyone. I'm really happy and excited to be here. I've been kind of working together with Evelyn to put this on, and she's amazing, and just kind of how she's organizing everything, and just her attitude of learning and growing. And I'm really happy to be of service and to share a lot of my wisdom. I've been doing project management for about 25 plus years. I did my bachelor's and master's in music. I did some ministry work, and then I've always played music and worked as a consultant for the last 25 plus years. So a lot of my books and my writings are first world experience of what it's like to play in music, and then what it's like to lead very high profile project teams. One of my latest clients that I've been working with on retainer for the last 10 years, besides leading my company, has been a large Department of Transportation. And they brought me in to handle and help them control or figure out how to manage over 14,000 projects that had a $16 billion budget. And they are now #1 in the States when it comes to road construction scheduling. So a lot of that wisdom and things that I've gone through, I'd be happy to share with you guys tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. Oh wow. So when I read your book, I was first inspired by your professional journey. So on this slide, I am including some TED Talks you delivered in the past, including a TEDx talk. And so you are a musician, and you're a business CEO, and you're an author. And so I'm really curious about your professional journey, and how could your multiple backgrounds in music, business, leadership, and writing, how do they all connect and come together to shape who you are?
Okay, so to be honest, it all started at 10 years old, playing music. And, honestly, playing the guitar, and that's how I got started. And I joined a band with some friends, and one of them was an amazing guitar player. So I knew I wasn't the guy. I wasn't going to be the guitar player. And so I switched to playing bass in the band. But that led me to a point in my life where they had just created what's called the Lakeland Civic Center down in Central Florida. And all of these major bands would come through, the Commodores, Earth, Wind and Fire, Buddy Rich Orchestra, just all these amazing groups. And I got to see them as a kid. I'm saying I'm 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, and got it to meet a number of these people and see them up close. And that just inspired me. And the things I learned as I developed myself as a musician are the same things I use today and that I used throughout my career. One is, life's a symphony. 2, you got to work together in harmony. 3, you have to keep practicing your bass. You have to keep practicing your instrument. You have to keep learning and getting better. 4, you need a coach. Even now, I'll just go ahead and say it. I'm 60 years old. I have probably about 4 or 5 coaches. I've been coached by Jack Canfield. I'm working with a gentleman whose name is Dr. Paul Shealy, Jeb Blunt, just a number of folks who are at the top of their game. And I always look for coaches who are really doing what I would like to do and who can compel me and help me get to that next level of my life and my career, whatever I'm doing. And so that's these things that I've learned. That's just a sample of them. I won't go in more, but really it's that passion and that fire that has motivated me, and being able to combine music, workplace culture, productivity, and neuroscience. And I'll share a little bit about that as well with the neuroscience.
Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, so I definitely agree that you have to, it's really important to, like commitment and, dedication. Um, so it's definitely very like inspiring. So thank you so much for sharing your journey. And now I would like to have you talk about the context of your book.
Yeah.
What trend of our what trend um of our societies stimulated you to write your book.
Right.
And as you know, many articles refer to our world today as the project economy.
Economy. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you agree with this term?
I totally agree with this term. I actually know firsthand the gentleman who coined that phrase, Antonio Nito Rodriguez, who is the author of the Harvard Business Review book on project management handbook. And he actually wrote the foreword for my new book.
Oh, that's so cool.
The foreword of that book was written by the guy who coined this phrase, the project economy. And if you think about it, for years we've been in the information age.
Yeah.
And besides of automation, between automation and outsourcing work, most of the operational activities have been automated or taken over. So really the only real work that we have to do as human beings is completing massive projects or small projects or medium projects. But we're a project-focused organization or a society. You think about ChatGPT and all of the automation that AI is bringing to the world. The soft skills of being a human, personality, positivity, getting things done, uniquely knowing how to manage projects, those are going to become more and more important. So in 2005, I got my PMP certification. And I was working as a project manager, still playing music, but I was also teaching. I had done some work for the National Archives, and I was working, I think I was at Geico and some other places like that, consulting. So I got my PMP, and 10 years later, 2015, when I'm getting ready to write my first book, I also had done a lot of consulting for major law firms and, again, major consulting areas. I wanted to go and take the PFMP certification, which is the portfolio level. There's the PMP certification, there's the program certification, and then there's the PFMP, which is portfolio management, where you're basically working with the C-suite or the senior team within an organization, helping them to manage the budget and figure out how to optimize and lay out all those resources and so on. When I was planning on trying to take the certification, I could not find the course that I felt like I needed to pass that certification. I found a lot of test exam questions and things like that. So I wrote a course on the PFMP certification that's aligned to the PMI process. And I did that because I had just led a project where I worked with Carl Pritchard and another young lady with Center of Medicare Medicaid Services, and created a couple of certified courses for them. So I had the methodology for how to write a certification course. So I then took that same methodology, wrote my course. And so my book that I just released actually teaches the content of the course I wrote back in 2015. And I took that in 2015 because you have to have 10 years of experience before you can even sit for the PFMP certification. And being able to sit for it, I had to write my course, studied for it, and I passed it and got the PFMP certification. And then I started teaching it, and I really wanted to make that information accessible. And I don't know if you've ever read, or anybody on the call has ever read The Goal. It's a book called The Goal by Elliot Goldratt, The Theory of Constraints. Well, I'm certified in the Theory of Constraints and Portfolio Management. I studied at the Goldratt Institute for a couple of weeks up in New Haven, Connecticut. And I love that book because he takes a very complex concept that's based on physics, the theory of constraints, and he uses a story to teach you the principles. And so as you go through the life of Alex and his wife and their children, and if you go through all the challenges that he's facing, you experience the theory of constraints. You see this theory of constraints come in action. So when I wrote my book, I wanted to take that same mindset, a concept of creating a novel or story that would be really engaging, kind of like Ted Lasso, right? That a lot of people are really engaged about that. And so, in fact, I hired a fiction writer because I'm a nonfiction writer. So I hired a fiction writer coach, and we streamlined. And here was the other thing about it: the fiction writer coach that I hired happened to also be an orchestra musician,
Oh,
and he
wow.
had played the role of the orchestra manager in real life. And so I'm a bass player who played a bass in the orchestra. And so you can start seeing that there's some reality in some of the stories. And so as you read through the story of A Symphony of Choices, you'll realize that, there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of suspense, but there's a lot of real world challenges that Jerry Hall goes through. And Dr. Carl Richardson is teaching him all of these principles and strategies, but in small bites, in a small way, so that he can really understand how to put them into practice. And then they kind of go back and forth through coaching. So that's really the principle of how I created the book and why I created the book.
Wow, that's really interesting. I haven't read that book, but I'm definitely going to buy it right after this conversation. So thank you, Mr. Leonard. So since our audience today come from diverse backgrounds, could you please define two key terms used throughout your book,
Sure.
project management and project portfolio management?
Sure. Project management is at the lower level of the three P's, right? You have projects, programs, and portfolios. A project is a temporary effort that has a beginning and an end. And you have a charter and you have specific things that you need to do. You have a strategy, and it depends on the size of the project. I remember being in some major firms where I would develop what called criteria for projects. And so if a project was a small project, there would be specific things that you'd have to do to manage that project, but not too much rigor because it's a small effort. As the effort got larger, the rigor and documentation that was required became a little bit more intense, or a little bit more, but I always kept everything in a way that it was easy to fill out. So projects, you get in, you get them done, they're done, you move on to the next project. A portfolio is a continuous process where you're now focused on optimizing all the projects, the programs, and operational work in your organization based on the budget. Because most organizations are going to have a constrained budget, whether that constrained budget is $2, $2 million, $200 million, and $2 billion. That's still a constraint, right? You only have so much money to go around. And if you have a $2 billion budget, but you have $20 billion of ideas, you can't do all of those. So the idea of portfolio management is to create criteria where you can measure against each of those projects to determine which project will provide the greatest benefit to the organization. And then if you have constrained resources, which most organizations have, a limited amount of resources, how do you optimally use those resources to deliver on those projects and create the tangible and intangible benefits that the company is looking for with carrying out this particular portfolio? And a portfolio is something that gets renewed every year or every quarter that you're going to review it to make sure. And a portfolio includes other portfolios. It can include programs. It can include projects, and it can also include operational work.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. Thank you, Mr. Leonard. So the protagonist of the book is a person named Jerry. He is a musician who is given the opportunity to become the personnel manager of for the symphony that he is playing.
Right.
and so he quickly becomes overwhelmed and must figure out how to meet all the expectations of his job. In the background are serious marital problems,
Yeah.
and he finds he is juggling like multiple balls, and he is stressed, and he's about to drop all of them. Now, well, for this one, I have a question for everyone in the audience. So if you were Jerry, what challenges could you think in would you think of in year one? If that makes sense.
Now, do you want me to answer, or are you going to have other people answer and live
Um,
time?
anyone can answer.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, while other people are sharing, how would you solve this, Mr. Leonard?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like, if you get the book, that's how it would that's how it would solve the problem. But basically, when you think about Jerry and the way that the scenario that you just set up, isn't that the way life is? That you go to work and you strive to become a project manager, or you're a student and you're trying to move your life forward and your job forward, but you also have a family. Now, whether you're married or not, you may be married, you may not be married, but you have a mom and a dad, you have brothers and sisters, you have a family, you have friends, you have other things going on in your life, and they don't all go smoothly all the time.
Yeah.
There's hiccups, there's challenges, there's hard conversations. And so when you look at the storyline of Jerry, you see him having to be a real person with real challenges and real life issues that can go on. So, I'd love to hear from other people how they think they would handle some of this. I see somebody saying delegating and some other things in there of how they would look at some of the challenges. So anyone else? And feel free to come off microphone as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
I
oh, yeah. Yeah.
Where I'm adult, so if if my work role changed, I would need to talk to my family, and then if I can get their support, then I feel more encouraged in my new role.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Excellent.
I see someone say communicate, asking about something, definitely. Communication is really key. Prioritize finding resources, yeah, definitely.
Now, I think one of the most important things we can do besides communicating with our families and make sure we have support, because, and here's the thing, is that sometimes we might have that conversation with family that we're switching jobs, or our jobs are going to require us to travel, or we're having to do this or do that. And they might not understand why we're having to do what we're having to do, right? They may not understand why we're wanting to take that new job, and why don't we just stay put? Because once you get on a path of growing, you still want to grow. So one of the things I would always say is, and whether it's a professional or a personal coach, is to find a coach or a mentor. And that's one of the first things that you will learn about Jerry, is as he's even, dealing with the idea that he got this opportunity to be the orchestra manager, he starts thinking like, okay, what do I have to do? And who do I know that has all this experience and management skills that can shepherd me, that can help me, that can coach me through the process? And so that's when he reaches out to Dr. Carl Richardson, who he had studied with in college. And they got together on a weekly basis, a regular basis, and started that process. And I would say for anything in your life, if you're trying to go to the next level, whether it's personally, professionally, or any other, sports or anything else, all of the highest paid and best people in those areas, they all have coaches. If you think about the sports world, all of the best sports people in the world, they all have coaches that they pay and that they get input and feedback from. And so don't let that escape you, because I look at coaching as being in the HOV lane. When you're driving on a highway, if you're stuck in traffic by yourself in the car, you're with everybody else. But if you have someone with you, you get to go in what's called the HOV lane or the express lane, depending on where you are in the country or in the world. And if you're in the express lane, you can get home in 15, 20 minutes and you're not stuck in traffic for 2 hours. Think about that when it comes to your life or your career.
Yeah.
If you have a really good coach that knows how to get there, they can help you move forward much, much faster than if you try to do it by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that many people would think that this is just common sense to find mentors or prioritize, but I feel like when you have that many stress going on in life, it's really hard to think properly. So it's really,
Exactly.
plan it out. So that was a very interesting brainstorming exercise. So let me turn back to you. So
Yep.
I included a figure from your book,
Okay.
and it is about using different frameworks to help a manager prioritize work. And if you serve as Jerry's mentor, what would be the first piece of advice you would give him? And could you please use this figure to, explain?
Sure, sure. This is one of the first things that happens because a lot of times, especially if you're a new project manager,
Yeah.
you walk into an office and someone says, we have a PMO, right? So the question is, and I would always ask the project manager or the business owner or whoever the person I'm talking to that says they have a PMO, I would say, do you have a project PMO?
Yeah.
Do you have a program PMO? Or do you have a portfolio PMO? Because all of them start with P. So you can have, so the activities, if you're at the project level, you're just overseeing dispersed projects that are separate from each other. And you have a project manager for each one, or you have a few people managing multiple projects, but they're all doing different things and they're not all combined. If you have a program, then you have a group of projects that are all geared towards delivering a specific benefit to an organization.
Yeah.
And if you have a portfolio, you can have multiple programs or projects or even operational work. And at the portfolio level, the most important thing to think about is what's the value to the business, right? What's the value to the overall business? And are the projects and programs strategically aligned? In other words, are they helping you go from point A to point B as a business? At the portfolio level, it's all about stakeholder value. And are the stakeholders getting the benefits? And it's also about benefit management. Are they getting the benefits from all of those projects being done as a single unit, even though they're separate projects? And at the portfolio, it's are you receiving a quality deliverable? And so by understanding those principles, you are in a large organization, or in the book, Jerry's actually playing in all three areas. But he needed to understand that a project is a project, a program is a program, and what that's made of, and a portfolio is the overall strategy, and making sure that all the work that's going on is helping the organization go from where it is right now to where it wants to be.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Thank you very much. So another reason I personally really enjoyed reading a book is that you provide a lot of insights or frameworks of thinking for business development. For example, the 3 investment types included in a figure from your book: transform the business, grow the business, and run the business.
Right.
So could you please share a little bit about this framework and how does it help us organize a portfolio of projects?
Sure. Now think about it this way, because this is one of the things I always talk about when I teach this in a course, is when you walk into the grocery store, you see on one side, usually on the right side of a grocery store, you see all of the fruits and vegetables together. In the middle aisle, you see all of the boxed type products. And on the other left side, you see a lot of the eggs and milk and dairy type products together. And in one section, you see all the cleaning supplies kind of categorized. Well, why is that? Well, it's because when you're going in, you are trying to make sure you have a balanced diet. And this model, which was actually created by Gartner, creates a balanced diet for an organization. In other words, so many projects within an organization need to keep the lights in the business running. In other words, things need to get updated, systems need to get updated, buildings need to get updated, and so on. So that's kind of running the business. It's not making money for the business. It's not reducing costs for the business. It's not lowering expenses. It's just keeping the lights on. So you have to do some of that. And a lot of times you have to do quite a bit of that. But then you also have to have projects in your portfolio that grow the business. So this is like a different category. This is like going from the vegetables to the meat aisle, or the meat section of the grocery store. So in the growth section, you're then looking at projects where you can either grow your revenue or you decrease your expenses, because either way, you're growing the business by decreasing expenses or growing the revenue. And then to transform the business, because it's very disruptive, that's where you create your iPhone, right? You bring an iPhone to the market, or you bring AI to the market. You're transforming, you're radically changing how things are done. So all your projects in your portfolio can't be transformational projects, because you got to keep the business running. And all your projects can't just be growth projects, because again, you have to keep the business growing. And if you follow the Sigmund curve, once you get to a certain level of growth, things are going to start going down. And so, but the transformational projects will pick up once that Sigmund curve starts going down. The transformational area picks up and creates a new product or service that you can then launch and keep growing your business. So you really need all three types of projects. I mean, this is not the only framework that is out there, but I think it's one of the simplest ones. 3 is always a good number, and it's pretty easy to understand. And I like the RGT concept.
Yeah. Wow. That's very, sorry, slide. That is very interesting and helpful. So now I would like to invite everyone in the audience back to join a group discussion. So in an organization where projects are seen as critical to its success, how could the portfolio manager determine if selected projects are healthy and will provide the company with value and new opportunities? So we'll give you a few seconds to think about that.
Would anyone want to raise their hand to give some thoughts around that question?
Yeah, I know it's a bit much, but no one? Well, it's kind of a long question, so I'll probably give a few minutes. Yes.
Exactly. You're definitely going to have feedback from peers. And someone is that Darren?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I was going to take a more general approach to it. I think, like all things in project management, the portfolio manager ensuring that the projects are achieving their desired effects all comes down to communication, right? You have to have a certain level of meetings. You have to have your project management reviews. It comes down to checking with the end users. Are they satisfied with the interim results? You have to have that good communication, that good stakeholder engagement across all levels, up, down, and left and right, to make sure that they're delivering on the metrics that they're supposed to deliver.
Yes. That's a great point. And Richard, could you come on? I know Rich Malzman, and share a little bit more and elaborate on your comment. I love your comment.
It's already a long comment. I would just say that if these projects have been seen as critical to its success, the "it" here is the organization. So this is Nike or Huawei or or Boston General Hospital. And so I've seen many cases where projects are, okay, we're on time, we're on budget, but the project has veered off in terms of meeting what the company is all about. And this is partially thanks to you, Gerald. Your books help drive home this point of connectedness between a project and its parent, either portfolio or program. And sometimes they get lost and stay successful, but become somewhat disjointed from what the mission of the company or branch of government is all about. So it doesn't directly answer the question, but it lets me get on my soapbox about this important topic a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of like a football player who gets really injured and he has to go and have surgery, and they had a successful surgery and saved his leg, but he can't play football anymore, right? Because the goal was for him to get back in the game. That's the overall goal for the team, to bring him back on the field. And if he has a great surgery and it keeps him from losing his leg, but he's not in a place where he can play again, that's kind of along the lines of, you have to strategically deliver projects that are aligned to where the organization is going, and that project is going to close the gap. Because really the whole idea of a portfolio, if you think about what they call enterprise architecture, right? Where the enterprise architecture is in one spot, like your foundational architecture, and then you have your future architecture a year or two out. All the activities in the middle to take you from point A to point B is a part of your portfolio. So if you get projects done, but they're not taking you to point B, then you've missed the mark. Also, if you're getting these projects done and point B changes because the market has changed, AI has come on board. Other things, there's globalization or other challenges, there's a war, whatever, and the overall strategy has changed, then those projects have to be reevaluated very quickly to make sure that they are still in line with the overall goal of the organization, and not just getting the project done for the sake of getting the project done. Would you say that's
one last comment? One last comment. So just to keep with another sports analogy, and I've got the Citgo sign behind me here. So you could have a baseball player who's got incentives in his contract that talk about how many home runs he hits.
Yes.
He could hit 45 home runs, but if they're all solo home runs without driving in the important runs that win games, his project of making his bonus is successful. But just like the Red Sox and Yankees this year, they're down in the basement.
Exactly. And just one last sports analogy. Think about Michael Jordan when he was playing before Phil, I think, I want to say Phil Knight, that's not the right person, but Phil, the coach Phil got there. Michael was still very, very successful, but the team wasn't winning championships. Exactly. It wasn't until he became successful in playing as a team player and getting everybody going that they actually started winning and reaching a goal. So that's just a couple of analogies there.
Yeah, I do agree that it's like always constantly changing and improving. Wow, there's a lot of answers. Yeah, I think we're running good on time. Okay, okay. I guess I'll move on to the next slide. Sure. So, okay. So let's move on to another discussion prompt. This one is for young people like me. So how could a high school student prepare for a college admission portfolio? And I think Yan also provided some connection between the first prompt, saying like, I feel this question is very important for students to think about as they are preparing for their college major, career path. And I agree, because, as a high school student, it's like your pathway, it's always changing and you're always finding new stuff, new interests. And it's a lot of factors that's constantly changing. So yeah, I'll give a few minutes for you guys to think about this prompt.
Well, I'll just share something real quick, and I'll go back to the mentoring concept. Here, mentoring is not going to a college professor, but going to college students who are already in college, for that high school students to talk to them and say, hey, what were the things that you need to have in place so that you had a successful entrance into college? And if you interviewed 3 or 4 or 5 students who are in college, you might get a number of different answers, but you're going to end up getting a collection of the same answers of the critical things that they had to focus on as well. And then obviously doing your research on the colleges.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the difference between a student and a manager, is, for example, high school, they have 4 years, or technically like 3 or 3.5 years to prepare for their portfolio. So although their interest may change, it, it will not do them good if they change very often and then
Right.
lost their focus. But I guess, for younger or first-time project manager, or any young profession, they can still try different projects or different industries.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I don't have a quick answer for this question, but I just feel the difference between, the difference. This question means differently for high school students and then for others, because there is a timeline.
Yeah, exactly.
And Susan's not, is because it's not as popular as the first prompt. Okay, should I give a few more minutes or should I move on? Okay, let's see. Yeah, I guess I'll give 1 more minute.
Okay.
Then okay, so okay, well, I love discussions. I find it really interesting, and it's a really good way to um think, kind of like stop and think about your thoughts, and also get to know other people's thoughts, and like adding on to what you already thought, or any differences. So I want to stop here and ask if anyone has any questions for Mr. Leonard. So yes, Mr. West.
Gerald, it's a great talk and really looking forward to reading the book. Thanks for taking the time tonight to be with all of us.
Yeah, definitely.
As a project manager and a musician myself, my question for you is, are you still playing? How much are you still playing? And how do you balance those two sides of your life? How do you become such an expert and so proficient in your work as a project manager, program manager, portfolio manager, and still keep up your musicianship?
Well, I still play. I still do play. I'm actually integrating a lot of what I'm doing now. So now I'm doing a lot more writing music and beginning to record music. I have some songs out. I have a producer I work with, where before I was actually playing with a band and traveling and things like that. Now have been, and while I was consulting and so on, I was playing a lot of local gigs wherever I was living, whether I was living in New York or living in Maryland. I played with different organizations. I did benefits. I did some recordings, things like that. So I didn't always have to be out on the road traveling or playing every night. Obviously, with all the other things that I've been able to accomplish business-wise, there was no way for me to be able to do that. But by playing on a regular basis, those things kept my chops sharp, and then having times to be able to hang out and play with other musicians as well, and then just constantly listening and learning from other musicians, and just playing it. I have some equipment at home where I can kind of create my own little band and play and keep myself sharp there. And I'm also including, and if you watch my TEDx, I'm also including playing in my speaking. So I use music as a metaphor when I speak. In fact, I'm speaking at the PMI conference in Atlanta here at the end of the month, end of October, and I'm integrating that with music. And I'm talking, my talk is called Focus on the Music, where I share some music I wrote, just music that people have heard. And I'm making points about it around project management, neuroscience, and team building, and all the things that you learn and that you experience as a musician with a team, that can be related to business. Thanks for that question.
Yeah. Well, actually, I have a burning question that I
Sure.
wanted to ask. That just thought of randomly, but so I play music. I play the violin and the piano. So project management involves initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing. So if we treat learning a new music, like a piece, as a project to complete, which of the
Mhm.
5 processes would you think is the most critical in that case, and which process is important that we tend to usually overlook?
So are you saying that what processes in developing a new piece of music or learning to play a new piece of music?
Yes.
I would definitely say one, when you're learning to play a new piece of music, you want to kind of listen to other artists who've played it and kind of understand the different interpretations that are out there. So you really get a feel for what that piece of music is about. And then start, play through it and
Yeah.
make all your fumbles and everything. And then go back and play it really slowly.
Mhm.
And then play it where you're working out all the details and you're playing it with the metronome where you're keeping it in time. And over time of doing that, you'll begin to see where, you're in line with it. You're making sure that you're not practicing mistakes into your playing, right? Because you can actually, just practicing for the sake of practicing isn't good. You have to practice to kind of improve. And it's basically the concept of deliberate practice. You're going to deliberately work on certain passages to get really comfortable, so that when you get to that spot and your fingers kind of get tied up in knots, you want to work all that out so that you can smoothly work through that transition. Then sometimes it's good to play it really fast and then go back and play it slow. But so those are just some of the things that I would do when I'm learning something new, and playing music. Things I wouldn't do is to play all the time and not take any breaks, because you have to give your non-conscious mind time to process everything that you just did.
Yeah.
And that's really, really important. And even in business and with productivity, we can, if we're working 12 or 15 hours a day, that's just not good. Because if you're going back-to-back meetings, it's not good, because you need to give your brain the time to back off and process what you just did and then get back into it. I teach something in my podcast called the Pomodoro technique. I'm sure you guys have probably heard of this, but basically it's the idea of working in like sprints or intervals. So 25-minute interval, you do focus work, and then you take a 10-minute break or a 5-minute break. And then you do another Pomodoro, which is another 25-minute sprint. And then you go and do something else. And this will help you to really focus on what you're working on, get it done. But it also, our bodies are in a rhythm all day long. There are 90-second rhythms, 90-minute rhythms, where our body's energy goes up and down. And so if we do work in small sprints and then take a break and let our conscious minds relax, let our non-conscious mind process everything we've learned, you will find that you will learn faster and get things done quicker by having that focused time.
Yeah. So, what step would you say would be the most important? Like, would you say like initiation, the planning step, like, what do you think is the most important?
As far as part of the project?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say just initiating, because motivation, because you need the motivation to do it.
Right.
And I think just the initiation, your motivation kind of just like helps along the way and helps other stuff. But like, what would you say would be?
I would say when it comes to, and I just think about project work overall, I would say, I guess for me, right now, the word that's coming to mind is the planning.
Yeah.
Is to really think through and visualize, like the charter, like to really clear about what you're trying to accomplish. Because the clear, and that's what I think a really good charter does in project management. Now, you can take that same concept into a regular goal, right? A regular goal that you're going to work on. And you think about it,
Yeah.
projects where you're really clear with the stakeholders and the business owners and yourself and your team about what it is that you guys are accomplishing and what the end goal looks like. That generates the motivation to get it done, because now you guys can see it.
Yeah.
And so it becomes becoming really, really clear about that process. So to me, I like that part of the process, because I know if I get that part right and I got everybody bought into the process, that, you know, the motivation, the initiating of the project and the execution of it is going to we're going to be able to get through it, because we've really thought through and have a clear picture of where we're trying to go with this.
So
I'd like to hear if somebody thinks differently.
Yeah. Okay. So Jose says my question would be the same. Go to the stages of project management, project mentioned by me, is how different are those five stages of a project and project management versus portfolio management, if any?
Well, you know, the portfolio management, yes, you have the ability to initiate a portfolio, but it's really different than project management, where project management, you're just managing a short segment of time, whether that time is 2 weeks, 3 months, 5 years, right? But a portfolio is something that is going on consistently. Now you need to initiate the portfolio, but that's a whole different set of activities, because the whole purpose of the portfolio is to ensure that all the activities of the organization are aligned with the strategy of the organization. So I don't have to do a project. I don't need to get the CEO, the CIO, the CFO, the COO, the CHRO, all of those chiefs in line, because they're directing the organization. And I don't have to get the board on board with where this is going. At the portfolio level, you do have to do that, because the strategic plan that they've created for the organization becomes your roadmap of activities. Because based on their strategic plan and where they want the organization to go, you then have to say, do we have the right vehicle to get there? And that vehicle is your enterprise architecture, and the steps between where you are now and where you're trying to go becomes your portfolio. And that's always going to continually revolving or changing quarterly, every 6 months, yearly, where a project doesn't follow that same process to some extent.
Okay. Would you say the 10 knowledge areas in project management apply to the portfolio level?
No, they're different. Now, you'll see some of the same terminology of the knowledge areas, but the portfolio levels are really different, because in the portfolio level, again, you have the selection of the portfolio criteria, you have the portfolio categorization, you have the portfolio risk management. Is not risk to the project, it's risk to the business. Communication is not just risk, it's not just communication to the team, it's communication to the board, communication to the overall business, communication to the stakeholders. It could be communication to the federal government based on the size. I mean, think about, do you think Microsoft, as they're making these changes, or Apple, as they're making these changes in how they're doing things with AI and frequencies and so on, that they have to keep the federal government engaged in what they're doing? So one of the key stakeholders for an organization like that becomes state or local and federal governments, where for a project that might not be the case.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions?
You're welcome.
Guys. Yeah. Okay. Well, if there's no questions, we'll move on. I have a few more slides left. So thank you all for sharing. One goal for PM Ready to host this book talk is to nurture the next generation of project contributors. According to a report from the Project Management Institute, by 2030, the world needs about 25 million new project management employees. The youth are, I've heard someone say that, yeah, youth are tomorrow's project leaders, and I mean, I totally agree. And I would like to invite any adult professionals who are joining us today or listening to the event recording to share your project insights or leadership development insights with our youth. Mr. Leonard, would you mind sharing your message for our youth first?
Sure, I would definitely be engaged in doing that.
Okay.
Oh, was that your cue to me to say something inspirational? Sorry. So I would definitely say, based on my research, it is critical that, and for the future of work, with like, again, automation and all the things, AI and all the things that are going on in the world, that the project economy is real, and that there will be amazing opportunities in this space, because in the future, the majority of the work that we will do as human beings will be project type work. And learning these strategies early, and then also understanding the value of mentorship and coaching and just the concepts that we've been talking about today will move you forward in amazing ways. Where if we don't have that, it's going to be really challenging to find work, because a lot of things, for as automations, outsourcing, and so on, are going to replace some of the day-to-day activities that people are doing right now.
Thank you. So, okay. Well, this is the end of the book talk. Thank you, Mr. Leonard, for joining us today.
You're welcome.
To our audience, the book purchase link and barcode are included on the screen in case you are considering purchasing a copy. There's also, he did mention the goal, and I think someone put it in the chat, put the link in the chat as well, because I'm definitely getting that book. And at the same time, I would like to invite you all to join our next virtual event, my Latinx roots in project management. This event is to celebrate the Hispanic Heritage Month, and it will be held on October 12th, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You may register using the link on the barcode on this slide. Okay. How to obtain PDF? I'll mention that at the end. So, thank you all for joining us this evening. And please kindly complete a quick survey using the link or barcode on the screen. And please subscribe to our monthly newsletters to learn more about our events. And if you are a PMI certified member, please contact me via email to request your PDU certificate. My email is shown on the screen. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone.